How dare you take a seat at this table without asking?" Zanaya's yell cut through the apartment like a sharp crack. I saw my plate of food sail across the room and crash against the kitchen tiles. The black-eyed pea stew splashed all over, spotting my footwear and the bottom edge of my gray skirt. My boy Kareem applauded like it was some kind of performance. "Well done, honey. That elderly lady needs to learn her limits." His remark struck deeper than any slap could. Something deep within me snapped, like fragile glass crumbling after enduring endless strain. Yet they overlooked a key piece of information that was set to transform it all. A hidden truth I'd kept locked away quietly, biding time for the ideal opportunity. And now, that opportunity had emerged. Allow me to rewind a little. I'm Amara, aged 67. If you spotted me walking down the sidewalk, you'd likely overlook me entirely. I'm the type of woman who fades seamlessly into the scenery. My silver-streaked hair sits in a plain ponytail. I opt for unassuming outfits and skip any bold accessories. For 43 years, I'd been married to Theonius. 43 years of gathering his scattered garments, preparing his coffee just as he preferred, and staying awake until he returned from his late nights. I never griped about it. That was simply the norm for folks of my era. You didn't challenge things. You just handled what needed handling. Theonius wasn't cruel, nor was he exceptionally kind. He was just average. The sort who'd arrive home exhausted from his job, plant himself in front of the TV, and assume supper was waiting. We shared one kid, Kareem, my sole son, the young man for whom I sacrificed my aspirations, my secretarial position, my entire existence. I figured it was the proper choice. I thought motherhood required surrendering it all. My world stayed compact, yet it belonged to me. Our place was a humble dwelling on the city's edge. Nothing extravagant, but it featured a garden where I cultivated tomatoes and aromatic greens. I enjoyed lingering there as dusk fell, when the glow turned everything to amber and the breeze carried the scent of moist soil. I'd flip through worn novels picked up from swap meets, nursing chamomile tea from a flawed cup that once was my mother's. Those intervals brought quiet and calm. Nobody demanded a thing from me. Nobody anticipated anything. I just was, and that sufficed. Kareem tied the knot 3 years back. He encountered Zanaya through work, and right from the start, I sensed she had no interest in having me nearby. I caught that icy, scheming glance in her eyes at the ceremony. Still, I held my tongue. I'd always held my tongue. That's how I'd navigated life. I assumed patience would smooth things out, that we'd eventually connect. I couldn't have been more mistaken. Post-wedding, their drop-ins dwindled sharply. Kareem forever had a reason. "We're swamped, Ma. Zanaya's under the weather. We've got commitments." I'd agree with a grin and claim it was fine, though the evening stretched on and the quiet in the home weighed heavier. I'd prepare meals for a pair and dine solo, stashing leftovers in the fridge in hopes he'd swing by. He never appeared. Then Theonius passed away. It happened abruptly, a cardiac event while he slept. I roused one dawn and he was no more, gone in an instant. No alerts, no farewells. Overnight, I was utterly isolated in that space, which abruptly felt oversized and hollow. The initial days hit hardest. I'd roam the spaces, anticipating his tone, the echo of his steps, but encountered only stillness, a quiet that seeped into my very core. Kareem showed up for the burial. He lingered precisely 2 hours. Zanaya never stepped from the vehicle. She said a headache kept her inside. Following that, weeks passed without any contact. I rang multiple times, dropping voicemails. Zilch. It seemed my son had vanished right with his dad. One evening, perched in the kitchen, clutching a mug of lukewarm tea, a harsh insight struck. I was profoundly isolated globally. No brothers or sisters remained. My folks had departed this life ages ago. Old playmates from youth had scattered gradually. Kareem was all I had left, and even he rejected me. That reality punched into my stomach like a blow. The pain was so intense I clutched the table's side to steady myself. That evening, I wept. I sobbed more fiercely than in decades. I mourned Theonius, my isolation, the squandered time. Above all, I grieved for my son, the infant I'd cradled, soothed during illnesses, comforted through bad dreams. That innocent was gone, replaced by an adult who viewed me as a weight, something disposable. That's the point when I resolved on the choice that would alter it all. I reasoned that possessing something worthwhile to share might draw my son closer. Perhaps he'd recognize me, listen, and include me in his world. The property was in my name. Theonius had willed it to me, valued at about $70,000. No vast sum, but substantial enough. I phoned Kareem and outlined an idea. I'd put the house on the market, and using those funds, we'd purchase a bigger apartment where the whole family could share a home. He'd get his own area with Zanaya, and I'd claim my separate spot. It seemed ideal. After months of gloom, my boy was buzzing with energy for the first time. "You'd actually go for that, Mom." His tone softened, carrying a rare warmth. "Absolutely, sweetheart. I'd move mountains for you." And I truly meant every word. I'd have laid down my life for him in an instant, no hesitation. Clearing out my old house hurt more than I'd expected. Each corner brimmed with echoes of the past. The kitchen, scene of countless home-cooked dinners. The sleeping quarters where Theonius and I had shared nights for more than 40 years. That modest backyard plot where I'd tracked the blooming cycles of my flowers year after year. I stuffed a whole life's worth into cartons. Faded outfits, time-stained photos, notes from Theonius back in our courting days. Every item whispered fragments of who I'd been. Still, I told myself this was the smart move. I was forging a new chapter alongside my son. Nothing else counted. That was the heart of it all. The place sold after just 2 months, netting me $84,000. Staring at that payment slip, I grew lightheaded. This was my entire nest egg, the sum of decades spent toiling and giving. I rang Kareem, thrilled. "It's all set, honey. The funds are here." He showed up that very afternoon, Zanaya in tow. She'd never crossed my threshold before. She roamed the spaces with a sneer, prodding items like they were junk. "Such a dated dump," she remarked, eyeing the pale curtains I'd stitched by hand. "It reeks of age." I bit my tongue, forced a grin, and stayed quiet. Kareem pulled me into an embrace. "Appreciate it, Mom. This changes everything for us." Yet his gaze skipped over me, fixing instead on the check clutched in my grip. We scouted units as a trio. Zanaya called the shots. Kareem agreed, and I held my peace. That became our routine. We checked out no fewer than 15 options. Some ran too pricey, others felt too tight, or Zanaya just vetoed them outright. "I require room to breathe," she'd insist. "Claustrophobia hits me hard in tight spots." At last, we landed on a unit in a sleek midtown tower. It boasted 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a roomy galley with fresh gadgets, and an airy setup blending lounge and meal areas. Floor-to-ceiling views captured the urban panorama. The price tag, $85,000. That drained nearly every cent I had. "Spot on," Zanaya beamed, her face lighting up. It was her inaugural genuine grin in my presence. Kareem turned to me. "Your take, Mom." I scanned the space. It shone, fresh, spotless, modern. No arguing that. "If it suits you both, it suits me," I responded. With those words, I locked in my destiny. We headed to the legal office to ink the deal. The attorney, a weary fellow called Isaiah sporting heavy lenses, droned through the paperwork. Tension knotted my stomach. I'd never navigated this solo. Theonius had always steered such matters. "Mrs. Dubois, the deed goes solely to Zanaya," he noted midway. "To me and my spouses, naturally," she interjected. I went rigid. Isaiah eyed me. "Do you consent, madam? After all, it's your funds covering this purchase." Kareem clasped my palm. "It's merely paperwork, Mom. Family's family. Who owns it on paper doesn't count." "Yeah." I clenched tight, a lump rising in my windpipe. An inner voice howled that this screamed trouble. but peering into Kareem's face, I glimpsed the child he once was, the one who leaned on me. "No big deal," I murmured. "List them as owners." Isaiah's brow creased. "Madam, I must advise against this. Without your name, you'll hold zero claim to the asset." Zanaya chuckled sharply, suggesting we'd mistreat my mother-in-law. That's offensive. Kareem rose. "We need a different counsel, one who respects our circle." Isaiah raised his palms. "No offense meant, just fulfilling my duty to safeguard the payer's stake." I stood trapped in the crossfire. Conflict was the last thing I craved, especially if it irked my son. "It's okay," I uttered, voice quivering. "I'll endorse as they direct." He exhaled deeply. "Very well, madam. But initial this extra form first. It's your consent to gift the sum outright, fully aware you'll retain no ownership." I scrawled my name, hand shaking wildly enough to blur the mark, but I did it. I passed the check over. I observed as he finalized the filings. Once wrapped, Zanaya's grin stretched wide. Kareem pecked my brow. World's greatest mother. Those should have warmed me, yet hollowness settled in, like I'd surrendered far beyond cash, like I'd traded my self-respect, my tomorrow, my safety net. We exited the office wordlessly. Zanaya strode on, poring over the docs with glee. Kareem stayed close. "All will turn out right, Mom. You'll understand soon. We're heading!" We aimed to form a joyful household. I agreed with a nod. I yearned to trust his words. I held on to that assurance desperately, much like a castaway grips a fragment of wreckage amid stormy seas. Yet the attorney, Isaiah, halted me as I reached the exit. He lingered until Zanaya and Kareem had stepped out. "Mrs. Dubois," he murmured gently, "take my business card. Reach out if you require assistance. What you've done carries real risks. You're walking away empty-handed." I accepted the card, slipping it into my handbag. "Thanks, but I won't need it. I have faith in my boy." Isaiah shook his head slowly. "Let's hope that's true, ma'am. I really do." Departing the office, I carried a heavy burden in my heart, a shadowy foreboding I couldn't shake, though I pushed it aside. I climbed into the vehicle alongside Kareem and Zanaya. They chattered with laughter, sketching out dreams, discussing what lay ahead. I gazed through the glass, observing the urban landscape blur past, questioning whether I'd just made the gravest error of my existence. The relocation happened swiftly. I had little to pack. Just some cartons of garments, my reading materials, my late mother's flawed teacup, faded snapshots, all of it squeezed into the rear of Kareem's automobile. In contrast, Zanaya and he showed up with a van brimming with fresh furnishings, sleek leather couches, an enormous ebony dining set, a massive screen, stylish fixtures, and puzzling abstract artworks that baffled me, though Zanaya insisted they represented modern creativity. As they hauled it all inside, I felt like an intruder stepping into a stranger's domain, not my own dwelling. "Where should I place your belongings, Mom?" Kareem inquired, gesturing toward my packages. "Anywhere with room, my dear." He transported them to the tiniest chamber along the corridor, a space devoid of natural light, facing merely the structure's air duct. The unending drone of conduits filled the air. I arranged my items wordlessly. I arranged my outfits in the compact wardrobe. I lined up my volumes along a ledge. I positioned Theonius's picture on the nightstand. Surveying the area, the pale, chilly, barren surfaces stared back. No touches of warmth, nothing marking it as mine. Perching on the mattress, I inhaled deeply. This is just for now, I reassured myself, until we adjust as a unit. Yet a knot formed within me, an unnamed unease. Venturing from the space, I toured the apartment. Zanaya busied herself in the galley, sorting dishware, tumblers, and cookware, all pristine. All gleaming. "Can I lend a hand?" I offered. She didn't glance my way. "Nope. I've got it sorted." Her tone cut sharp and curt. Lingering in the entryway, I felt adrift, unsure of my next move. Kareem tinkered in the lounge, wiring up the display. "Honey, shall I prepare a meal?" He dismissed it with a headshake, eyes fixed elsewhere. Zanaya's handled delivery. It's arriving soon. They hadn't checked if I was famished. They hadn't looped me in, yet I forced a grin. Sounds fine. I'll unwind for a spell. Those initial days felt odd. I sought my footing in that residence, yet it seemed I was invisible. Rising at dawn, per my habit, I brewed Java and crisped bread, only for Zanaya to enter and huff irritably. I mentioned I handle mornings. I dislike others handling my items. I retreated. Pardon me. I meant to assist. She seized the brewer and dumped my brew into the sink. This brew is terrible. Can't fathom how you ruin it so. Heat rose to my face. For 43 years, I'd prepared it identically. Complaints were unheard of. Still, I held my tongue. Retreating to my quarters, I settled on the edge and eavesdropped as Zanaya fixed the meal. Laughter echoed between her and Kareem. I caught their shared bites, their chatter, their scheduled outings. No summons for me. I haunted the place like a specter in what was theirs, for that apartment never truly belonged to me, did it? I attempted to craft a schedule. Morning strolls took me outdoors, procuring loaves, dairy, fresh produce. Returning, Zanaya would block the threshold. Why get this? Bread's stocked. You're wasting funds pointlessly. Clutching my purchases, I noted it came from my scant reserves, post the lease payment. But silence prevailed. You're correct. My apologies. She claimed the parcels. I'll manage provisions. You wouldn't grasp our requirements. I acquiesced, withdrew, and secluded myself indoors. Such patterns dragged on. I strived to contribute, to avoid hindrance, to shrink my presence, but it fell short. Nothing I attempted suited. Dishwashing, botched, floor wiping. Smudges remained, laundry folding, not her preferred style. Simply abstain, she snapped one evening. You just muddle matters. Dinner times proved harshest. Initially, Zanaya plated a portion for me on the prep surface. They dined formally adjacent. I consumed solo, upright toward the pane. I masticated quietly, attuned to their nearby dialogues. Topics spanned careers, companions, leisure schemes. Queries about my hours never came. Inclusion evaded me. It was as if I were eye unseen. That night, I attempted to join them at the table. I'd whipped up a smothered chicken recipe, the kind Kareem adored as a kid. I figured it might thaw the tension. I placed the pot right in the middle. I took a seat. Zanaya stepped into the dining area and froze. What on earth are you up to? Her tone sliced like a blade. I figured we could share a meal, I murmured, feeling tiny. She let out a harsh, empty chuckle. Share. When did you start dining with us? I glanced toward Kareem for backup. He kept his gaze fixed on his dish. Not a word from him. Zanaya approached slowly. The kitchen's where you belong, not at this table. I rose, shaking. I grabbed my plate. I retreated to the kitchen. I could hear her settling in. I listened as she dished out the meal. Then Kareem's voice. Thanks, honey. Like she'd prepared it herself, like I was nothing. Time dragged on and the situation deteriorated. Zanaya began imposing restrictions. No more using the primary bathroom, just the cramped one by my room. No TV in the living room, it disturbed the peace. Windows stayed shut to block the dust. No guests allowed. It was her domain, and she controlled access. Every limit felt like another shackle. Each ban stripped away a bit more of my self-respect. I attempted a conversation with Kareem. One afternoon, I caught him solo in the lounge. Son, we need to discuss this. He barely glanced up from his screen. What's up, Mom? I lowered myself beside him. This place makes me uneasy, especially with Zanaya. She's not kind to me. He exhaled deeply. Mom, she's under pressure. Work's overwhelming her. Try not to internalize it. A piece of me cracked. Don't internalize it, Kareem. She acts like I'm an outsider. At last, he met my eyes, but they held no warmth. Perhaps if you pitched in more domestically, if you weren't such a hindrance, maybe it'd improve. His remark struck like blows. A hindrance. Son, I funded this condo, he interrupted, rising, and we've offered you shelter. Isn't that sufficient?" He exited, abandoning me with my unspoken thoughts choking me. That evening, tears came in my room. I sobbed quietly, muffling into the pillow to avoid detection. I felt cornered. No escape in sight. My savings couldn't cover another rental. I'd poured it all into this condo that now shunned me. Options vanished, with no exit. Isaiah's business card from the attorney lingered in my bag. I considered dialing him, but to what end? What help could he provide? The documents were final. The property wasn't mine. I'd traded my security for the illusion of affection. Such a fool, so trusting. Utterly misguided. I studied my reflection in the tiny room mirror. An elderly face stared back, exhausted, shattered. A lifetime of fading into the background, destined to vanish entirely before the end. That's the conviction I held. Yet I was unaware of the spark buried within. A quiet force, one poised to stir. 2 months had elapsed since settling into the condo. 2 months that stretched like 2 years. Each day brought fresh degradation, innovative methods to underscore my unwelcomeness. Zanaya mastered subtle cruelty, never needing to shout. Subtle digs, disdainful glances, heavy pauses brimming with resentment. Hair in the basin once more. Why tread so clumsily? It's like boulders in your footwear. Planning to devour all that. At your stage in life, watch what you consume. Each barb was venom, and I soaked it up relentlessly until suffocation loomed. I confined myself to my room whenever possible. I'd rise, use the facilities, then return. I lingered until they departed before kitchen visits. I'd scarf down food, clean up, and barricade myself again. Existence narrowed to pale walls and a lumpy mattress. I revisited the same novels endlessly, funds too scarce for fresh reads. Through the narrow vent window, only shadows greeted me. At times, I pondered if this mirrored incarceration. Confined, despairing, marking time without purpose. I was morphing into a specter, haunting the space unseen, unheard, unloved. One dawn, I mustered courage for the laundry. Dirty garments had accumulated for weeks. I bided time until Zanaya headed to her job. Down I went with the hamper, loading the washer. Midway through the spin, the front door clicked open. She'd come back early. Her stilettos echoed approaching. My pulse raced wildly. She loomed in the doorway, arms folded. "What's this?" Her calm held an edge of threat. "Just laundering my things." She advanced to the machine, yanked it open, yanked out the drenched load, and dumped it on the tiles. I'd scheduled my wash for now. You'll reschedule. I stared at the sodden pile on the ground, soaked through and coated in suds. Yet midway through the wash, she cut me off. It didn't matter to me. This machine was mine. This place was mine. And so were the guidelines. With shaky fingers, I gathered my garments from the ground. The liquid drenched my footwear. I climbed the stairs, lugging my load, dripping water the entire path. Up in my space, I draped the items as well as possible. They stiffened upon drying, marked by crusty residue. Yet I refused to venture below again. Those weekend gatherings proved toughest. Zanaya would bring pals into the shared home. They'd chatter, sip drinks, and blast tunes. I remained barricaded in my quarters, absorbing every sound. One midday, a companion of hers rapped on my entrance by error. "Is the restroom in this direction?" Before I could reply, Zanaya's tone rang out. "Stay out of there. We stash unused junk in that spot." Giggles followed. I squeezed my eyelids shut and balled my hands. Unused junk, that's how she viewed me. A relic, a nuisance, tucked away in shadows, destined for the trash. Kareem's interactions with me dwindled. In the corridor, he'd dodge my eyes. If I attempted dialogue, he'd grunt single words. "How's your day going, my boy?" "Okay. Shall I prepare a meal for you?" "Nah." "Could we chat briefly?" "Occupied." It seemed my being shamed him, as though my nearness evoked memories he'd rather bury. Perhaps guilt, perhaps his disloyalty to his own parent. Yet guilt fades when ignored, and Kareem had mastered the art of muting it. On a particular Friday evening, holed up in my chamber, I caught heated exchanges. Zanaya and Kareem clashed in the common area. I leaned close to the panel. "I'm fed up with your mom sticking around," Zanaya vented. "It's like a ghost trailing you constantly." "I get it, honey, but what's your solution?" Kareem shot back. "Boot her out. Ship her to a home, a family member's place. Whatever. Just not here." Ice coursed through my veins, so that was their scheme to discard me. After stripping me bare, leaving me empty-handed, they now plotted eviction. And my boy, my sole child, backed the idea. That evening, Kareem skipped any visit to me, but tensions escalated. Zanaya dropped all pretense. She quit plating meals for me. Starving. Help yourself? Or should I spoon-feed you as well? I'd linger until their dinner ended, then raid the kitchen. At times, scraps were all that remained. Other moments, I'd settle for hardened loaves, spoiled produce, anything available. My outfits grew baggy, pounds melted away. Gazing into the glass, I saw a stranger. Hollow cheeks stared back. Pallid complexion turned me ghostly, like an animated cadaver. And perhaps that's my fate. A reanimated soul shambling in a dwelling that spurned her. One afternoon in my retreat, the door creaked open unannounced. Zanaya barged in. She scanned the area with disdain. "What a disaster in here. It reeks of moisture." It wasn't chaotic, neat and orderly, but I held my peace. She approached the rack, holding my volumes. She snatched one, leafed through casually. Still buried in this stuff. So dull. Down it went, discarded. She grabbed the next, repeating the toss. Methodically, she scattered every tome across the floor. I froze in place. Done. She eyed Theonius's picture. She lifted it. "Your spouse," she sneered with a smirk. "Bet he realized what a burden you are. Probably why he passed. To flee." A storm surged within, an anger I'd never unleashed. Still, I clamped my jaw, gulped down the wrath, allowing her rampage. She replaced the frame crookedly, teetering on the edge. "I require this space," she declared abruptly. "Planning a workspace, so relocate your sleeping spot." "Relocate," my words cracked. 3 rooms in this unit, you claim one. This was always mine. Where exactly? She lifted her shoulders indifferently. "Your issue, not mine. Couch, counter, sidewalk, pick. Doesn't faze me." She exited, abandoning me, quaking in despair. Sleep evaded me that night. Perched on the mattress, I fixed on the barrier, pondering, recalling. 4 decades plus of union, a child nurtured with boundless affection, a property surrendered in faith for the right choice. And here, degradation piled on degradation, agony layered upon agony. Until when? How much more could I endure? My gaze fell on Attorney Isaiah's contact slip by the nightstand. I'd pulled it forth repeatedly lately, yet never dialed. Now I gripped it, examined it closely. Perhaps the moment had arrived to act, to cease playing the sufferer, though the path remained unclear, the method elusive. Only one certainty: alteration was essential, for this existence proved unbearable. This existence wasn't living. It was merely getting by, and I was exhausted from merely getting by. The following morning, I awoke resolved. I would contact the attorney, Isaiah. I required conversation with somebody to gauge if there existed any option, even the slightest one, available to me. My fingers trembled while I punched in the digits from his business card. The line buzzed thrice prior to his pickup. "Isaiah Sanchez, legal counsel," came his greeting, steady and inviting. "Mr. Sanchez, this is Amara. Unsure if you recall, I visited your firm several months back regarding Mrs. Dubois." He cut in softly. "Naturally, I haven't forgotten. How have you been holding up?" I unraveled then. Sobs escaped uncontrollably. The floodgates I'd sealed for all those months of silence, of enduring, of gulping down the hurt, burst open. "I'm far from okay, Mr. Sanchez. Truly not." He allowed me space to steady myself. What's transpired? I unloaded it all. Each slight, every cutting remark, every instance of fading into nothingness. I went on for nearly half an hour uninterrupted. He absorbed it quietly, posing only occasional clarifying queries. Upon conclusion, a heavy pause lingered. "Mrs. Dubois," he ventured at last, "I'm deeply grieved by your ordeal, yet I need to disclose something crucial." My pulse quickened. What might that be? The day you arrived at my office, duty bound me to handle the paperwork as you'd authorized them. Legally, the condominium stands in your son and daughter-in-law's possession. He hesitated. Yet what? My tone dropped to a murmur. I took an action I likely ought not to have, but guilt gnawed at me after seeing you affix your signature. I drafted an alternate batch of forms, registering the property under your name. I bore witness to them myself and safeguarded the copies. Absent your endorsement, they hold no force naturally, but they're preserved should the need arise. I could scarcely process his words. You're implying. I'm stating that should you visit my office, endorse these forms, and we submit them properly, that condominium becomes yours by law. You funded it. You deserve ownership. Salty trails ran down my face, but these drops differed now. No longer born of anguish, they evoked a sensation I'd long misplaced, optimism. But how, with the papers I'd already initialed? Those submissions bear a procedural flaw I spotted later. Your son and daughter-in-law endorsed as beneficiaries of a gift, but the transfer form lacked proper finalization. It's a vulnerability in the system. If we move swiftly, we can rectify it. My thoughts whirled. Why extend this aid to me? He exhaled. My own mother shares your years, and I've witnessed far too many similar injustices. Decent folks exploited by kin. I can't rescue every soul, but perhaps I can assist yours. That same afternoon, I headed to his practice. I boarded the bus, a mode I'd forsaken for ages. I shared no plans with others. Zanaya was working, Kareem likewise. The place stood vacant, which I seized upon. Isaiah welcomed me with a gentle grin. He poured tea. I positioned myself across his workspace as he retrieved a hefty binder. Here they are, he announced, sliding them toward me. Endorse these and the condo registers to you. It'll be your legal asset. I eyed the sheets. Amara Dubois, proprietor. The phrasing appeared foreign, dreamlike. How soon until it's finalized? I inquired. Roughly 7 days. I know folks in records who can expedite. I gripped the pen, hovering above the page. Memories surfaced of Kareem as a child, the endless vigils through his illnesses. The decades poured into nurturing him, cherishing him, offering all within my power. What if doubt strikes later? I blurted. Isaiah regarded me with empathy. You hold off signing and matters remain unchanged. But Mrs. Dubois, permit me a question. Does your son honor you? I declined with a shake. Does your daughter-in-law cherish your worth? Another negation. Are you content in that residence? Fresh tears welled. No, it feels like gradual erasure. He inclined his head. Your decision's clear then. I inscribed each sheet, each mark, every blank demanding my script. Complete, Isaiah gathered the stack with care. Now, allow me to handle the rest. Expect my call in a week. Meanwhile, utter not a syllable to a soul. Clear. I assented. Your fee. He dismissed it. None. This concerns equity, not payment. Back at the condo, a shift settled over me. Buoyed, unburdened by an immense load, I entered quietly. Silence enveloped the space. In my chamber, I perched on the mattress. For the initial time in ages, a grin formed. Faint, subtle, yet authentic. I harbored a concealed truth, a potent one, and presently it belonged solely to me. The ensuing days felt odd. I adhered to my routine, confined to quarters, subsisting on remnants, tolerating Zanaya's biting remarks. But a shift had occurred within me. Whenever she hurled insults my way, I'd think to myself, hold on, just hold on. Whenever Kareem brushed me off, I'd remind myself, it won't last much longer. It felt like starring in a film where I alone knew the finale, and that finale would be spectacular. Zanaya picked up on the change in me, though she couldn't quite pinpoint it. Why the grin? She questioned one morning, spotting me in the kitchen. Grin, I echoed, feigning ignorance. Yeah, you seem off. Everything all right up there? I shrugged. Just feeling upbeat, that's all. She squinted at me with distrust. Well, I can't imagine why. You've got nothing to smile over. She exited the kitchen, abandoning me to my solitude. I continued beaming because she was clueless. Nobody knew, and that ignorance became my strength. The quiet wasn't her tool anymore. It had become my plan. A week passed and my phone buzzed. Isaiah was calling. Mrs. Dubos, I've got great updates. The paperwork's submitted. The condo is yours now officially. Swing by the office any time for the deeds. I shut my eyes. I'd pulled it off. After all the hardship, after bearing so much, I finally owned something truly mine, something untouchable. Yet I didn't rush to collect the papers. I bided my time. I watched. I scrutinized my adversaries like a commander surveys the terrain prior to battle. Zanaya grew harsher by the day. It seemed she could feel her grip on me slipping, and that rage only fueled her. How come you're not shedding tears anymore? She demanded one afternoon. You cried constantly before. What's shifted? I met her gaze steadily. Perhaps I just grew weary of weeping. She scoffed derisively. You ought to resume, because Kareem and I have made a call. You're out of here in 2 weeks. We've lined up a place that can house you. It's $300 monthly. You'll manage the payments from your Social Security. My Social Security arrived at $450. Covering the facility would leave me $150 for meals, meds, and all the rest. It meant plunging back into dire want, but I didn't waver. Got it, I stated plainly. She appeared let down by my composure. That's your only response. What else should I offer? Not sure. I figured you'd plead, sob, throw a fit. I shook my head. Nope, if that's your choice, I'll go along. Zanaya stared at me, blending bewilderment with irritation. She craved my shatter. She yearned for my ruin, yet I stayed composed, at peace. That evening, in my room by myself, I retrieved Isaiah's contact. The moment had arrived. The next day would mark it. The next day, this ordeal would conclude, but it wouldn't wrap up with begging or sobs. It would close with facts, with official papers, with the fairness I'd awaited for months. I climbed into bed and slumbered deeply for the first time in ages. I envisioned my garden, the scent of moist soil in the dusk tinting the world in amber. I pictured liberty. Upon rising, I realized that vision was on the verge of reality. All my years, I'd been unseen. All my years, I'd been the silent sufferer, the patient bearer, the compliant one. But even the most subdued soul has a breaking point, and I'd hit mine. Zanaya and Kareem had toyed with me like a lifeless puppet. They'd stripped my funds, my self-respect, my tranquility, but they erred gravely, a deadly oversight. They misjudged the elderly lady. They deemed me frail. They viewed me as naive. They believed they could demolish me unscathed. They were on the cusp of learning their grave miscalculation. And I was prepared, beyond prepared. I was impatient because, after months as the prey, it was my moment at last, my chance to voice, to move, to reveal who truly wielded authority, and I wouldn't squander this opening, not following all I'd endured. The reckoning dawned sooner than anticipated. Zanaya had set up a dinner gathering in the condo. She'd summoned colleagues from her job. She aimed to flaunt her flawless residence, her flawless existence. Naturally, I wasn't welcome at the table. I was meant to remain in my quarters, unseen as ever. But this evening diverged. This evening, the shift would unfold. I selected my outfit with care. I donned a deep green gown from my brighter past. I combed my hair and secured it neatly. I glanced into the mirror and for the first instance in months beheld beyond a fractured figure. I beheld resilience. I beheld resolve. I beheld a fighter poised for the fray. I stepped out as murmurs rose from the dining area. Zanaya was chuckling boisterously. Her guests chimed in. Kareem poured the wine. The aroma of lavish cuisine permeated the condo. Dishes undoubtedly sourced from an upscale eatery. Dishes I'd never sampled. I positioned myself in the dining room entrance. At first, no one noticed. They kept conversing, chuckling, and reveling. Then I advanced a step at a time, steadily closing the distance until I was directly beside the dining table. Zanaya spotted me before anyone else. Her chuckles halted abruptly. "What are you doing in here?" she hissed, her tone dark and threatening. "This is my home," I answered steadily. "Head to your quarters. We have guests." I refused with a shake of my head. "Not tonight. I'm staying put." Her companions eyed me with interest. Kareem rose to his feet. "Mom, please avoid causing a fuss." "A fuss," I echoed. "The kind of fusses you both forced me to endure these past months." The quiet turned thick and uncomfortable. Zanaya clutched her wine glass with such force that I feared it might shatter. "Kareem, escort your mother away." He moved closer. "Mom, let's discuss this afterward." I met his gaze. Those eyes that had once held affection for me, now they showed only frustration and impatience, treating me like an issue to resolve. "No," I declared resolutely. "I'm not going anywhere. Actually, I'm taking a seat." And so I did. I drew back a chair and settled at the table. Zanaya jumped up so abruptly, her seat nearly toppled. "How dare you take a spot here uninvited?" Her outburst rang through the apartment. Her friends watched the unfolding drama with stunned stares. One whispered about departing, but Zanaya ignored them entirely. Her attention locked solely on me. She seized my empty plate right in front of me and flung it down to the ground. The crash of it breaking was ear-splitting, shards flying in all directions. I remained still, planted in my chair, fixing my eyes on her. "Well done, darling," Kareem shouted, applauding mockingly. "The elderly lady needs a reminder of her status." His remarks stabbed at me like daggers, yet they only fueled my resolve. If anything, they provided the last spark I required. I rose deliberately. Zanaya regarded me with a smug grin. She believed victory was hers. She figured she'd crushed me once more. She couldn't have been more mistaken. I inhaled deeply. Then, in a tone unfamiliar to me, strong and commanding, rising from my core, I bellowed, "Now leave my apartment!" The ensuing hush was total. Nobody stirred. Nobody exhaled. Zanaya blinked in bewilderment. "What did you just say?" "I said," I reiterated more deliberately, relishing each syllable, "leave my apartment." Kareem chuckled uneasily. "Mom, seems like your years are getting to you. This place isn't yours." From my bag, I retrieved the paperwork I'd collected earlier that day from the attorney's office. I unfolded it methodically and laid it on the table. Certain about that. Zanaya snatched the sheets and scanned them. Her complexion shifted from angry crimson to ghostly pallor in moments. This can't possibly be legitimate." "It absolutely is," I assured her. "The apartment's title is under my name. It has been, at least on paper, since last week. But the funds that bought it came from me, and now I possess the proof." Kareem yanked the documents from Zanaya's grasp. He pored over them repeatedly, once, twice, thrice. "But you agreed to it." "We both did. This defies logic." "It makes perfect sense," I countered. "Apparently, the forms you endorsed contained flaws. The attorney graciously assisted in fixing them, and legally, this property belongs to me alone." Zanaya's companions stood awkwardly. "I believe it's time we head out," one suggested. "Yeah, we should probably split," another chimed in. They hurried away, whispering to each other. That left Zanaya and Kareem facing me solo. The balance of control had flipped, and everyone sensed it. Zanaya surged forward. This is deception. It's unlawful. We'll take you to court. I held firm. Go ahead and try. Everything's properly filed. A lawyer's already vetted it. You stand no chance. Kareem slumped into a seat. He appeared as if he'd encountered a specter. Mom, why? What prompted this? I regarded him with a blend of sorrow and letdown. Why? You're questioning me now. My voice quivered, not out of dread, but from pent-up feelings finally unleashed. Because you discarded me like garbage. Because you shamed me daily. Because you stripped away my self-respect, my tranquility, and my purpose. Because I ceased to be your parent and turned into your servant. And do you realize the cruelest aspect, Kareem? You pulled it off cheerfully. You relished my torment. He parted his lips to respond, but nothing emerged. Zanaya, however, wasn't silent. You have no right to evict us. Where do you expect us to end up? That's your concern, not mine, I shot back, echoing her prior dismissal of me word for word. Perhaps a motel, or relatives, or the sidewalk. It makes no difference to me. Zanaya glared at me with unfiltered loathing. You're a hag, a resentful, spiteful crone. Perhaps, but I'm a crone owning this apartment outright, while you pair are schemers suddenly homeless. So if worry's in order, it sure isn't mine. Kareem got to his feet and approached. Briefly, I feared an attack. I recoiled on reflex. Kareem, I cautioned, stay back. Yet he pressed on. You can't pull this off, we're kin. Kin. My vo. The chill fractured. You dubbed me family even as you doled out table scraps for my meals. You viewed me as kin when you confined me to a sunless chamber for the night. Was I truly family to you when you cheered on your wife as she degraded me? He offered no response, for none existed. He understood I spoke the truth. Zanaya commenced prowling about akin to a beast in captivity. We need to discover some action, a means to undo this mess. Nothing like that is possible, I declared with resolve. I've conferred with my lawyer already. The paperwork holds full legal weight and cannot be nullified. This apartment is under my ownership. Full stop. Abruptly, she halted. An odd grin spread across her features, one that sent unease through me. You're aging, she uttered deliberately. Frail, ailing. How much longer do you suppose you'll endure? Upon your passing, this place will pass to Kareem. He's your sole beneficiary. Her statement sent ice through my veins, not from dread of death itself, but from grasping the depths of her ruthlessness. I comprehended then that remaining isolated in that apartment alongside them put my existence at risk. Precisely for that reason, I countered. I've discussed revising my will with my lawyer. Should any misfortune befall me, the apartment transfers to a charitable organization. Kareem inherits not a penny. Kareem's expression shattered. You'd actually go through with it. You'd cut me out entirely. It's done, I fabricated. In truth, that was my immediate plan. I executed the documents earlier today. He dropped to his knees. Collapsed right there before me. Mom, I beg your pardon. I had no clue about my actions. Zanaya coerced me. She twisted my thoughts. I cherish you, Mom. I've cherished you forever. I gazed upon my boy prostrated on the ground, yet emptiness filled me. No compassion stirred, no affection, not a trace of animosity. Just an immense emptiness where a mother's warmth had once resided. It's beyond redemption, Kareem, utterly beyond. Zanaya seized his arm. Rise. Cease debasing yourself before this lady. Yet he refused to budge. Sobs racked him. Genuine tears streamed along his face. Please, Mom, grant me an opportunity. I'll improve, I swear. You've squandered months of opportunities, I informed him. Each instance you witnessed my torment offered a moment to change, yet you seized none. I pivoted to depart. That's when a shriek pierced the air. Zanaya had charged forward. Her grip clamped my shoulders, shoving hard. Equilibrium escaped me. I crashed heavily onto the ground. Agony burst in my hip. Kareem bellowed. Zanaya bellowed. I attempted to rise, but failure met me. The torment proved overwhelming. What have you wrought? Kareem roared at Zanaya. "You shoved her. She's injured." Zanaya retreated, palms pressed to her lips, comprehending her deed. "I never intended that. She incited me. It was accidental. Kareem sought to assist my ascent, but I repelled him. Keep your hands off." I hauled myself upright against the wall's support. Each shift brought torment. "It's finished," I gritted out. "The authorities are coming. I'm summoning them immediately." My fingers shook as I retrieved my device. The hip throbbed mercilessly, yet surges of adrenaline sustained me. I punched in 911. Zanaya surged anew, aiming to wrest the device away. "You wouldn't dare!" she shrieked. But Kareem restrained her. "Stop this, Zanaya. See the harm you've caused." The dispatcher responded, 911, what's the crisis?" My words emerged ragged and laced with hurt. "I've been attacked in my residence. Send assistance and medical transport. Suspect a fracture." I recited the location. The dispatcher assured aid en route, urged me to remain connected without disconnecting. I eased down the wall until seated on the tile. Standing proved impossible. The ache radiated across my limb. Zanaya resumed her frantic circuits like a confined predator. "This mess is on you. All of it stems from you, you wretched hag. Had you not schemed with those files, none of this fallout would occur. On me." From my spot on the ground, I tilted my gaze upward. My error lies in reclaiming my due. My misstep is refusing to remain your servant. She lowered herself before me, her visage mere breaths from mine. "Your blunder is playing the fool who couldn't hold her tongue. You might have dwelled here in calm, but no. You staged your ploy, and behold the result." She gestured toward my limb. "Merely the onset of your rightful comeuppance." Dread prickled my back. This individual posed a genuine peril, an authentic hazard. Kareem slumped on the couch, face buried in his palms. "They'll take you into custody, Zanaya. You thrust her down. Proof exists." She erupted in laughter, frantic, devoid of mirth. "Proof? What sort?" She toppled solo, feeble, elderly. She stumbled. "Isn't that so, Kareem?" Her stare bored into him, laden with menace. "Declare she tumbled alone." He raised his gaze. For the initial time in ages, his eyes held more than timidity. Terror lingered there, yet something deeper as well. Perhaps a flicker of morality, perhaps remorse. "I refuse to fabricate," he uttered, tone quivering. "I've deceived plenty. I've wounded my mother sufficiently. I cannot persist in this." Zanaya regarded him in stunned horror. "What do you mean?" He rose to confront her. "That you shoved her. I witnessed it. And should law enforcement inquire, I'll relay the facts." She recoiled as though struck. "You're set on turning against me after all we had constructed it side by side." Kareem shook his head in denial. "We didn't construct a single thing, Zanaya. We tore everything apart. We ruined my mother. We shattered the last shreds of my own integrity, and I simply can't endure it any longer." In the distance, sirens wailed, drawing nearer. Panic gripped Zanaya. She dashed toward the exit. "I'm not sticking around for whatever comes next." But Kareem stepped firmly into her path. "You're staying put. You're going to confront the mess you created." She shoved at him desperately, yet he overpowered her easily. He gripped her wrists tightly. "Release me. You're causing me pain." "Just like you tormented my mother for endless months," he shot back. His voice carried exhaustion and resignation, as though he was emerging from a long, dark dream. The sirens halted right outside the structure. I caught the sound of rapid steps climbing the staircase, followed by sharp raps on the entrance. "Police. Open up." Kareem let go of Zanaya and moved to unlock the door. 2 cops stepped inside, one male and one female with a pair of EMTs trailing behind. The woman officer spotted me sprawled on the ground and crouched down next to me. "Was it you who made the call?" I managed a nod. She shoved me. I gestured toward Zanaya. "She assaulted me right here in my residence." The man officer moved closer to Zanaya. "Is that accurate, miss?" She shook her head wildly. Absolutely not. No way. She just collapsed. She's elderly. She stumbled on her own. I did nothing wrong. The officer turned to Kareem. What exactly did you witness? Kareem shut his eyes briefly. He inhaled deeply. Then, as his gaze returned, I recognized my son at last. The version of him I'd always hoped for. My spouse shoved her. I witnessed the whole thing. My mom didn't simply stumble. Zanaya went after her out of rage because the apartment rightfully belongs to my mother under the law. The officer gave a curt nod. Got it. He eyed Zanaya. Miss, you'll need to accompany us down to the precinct. Zanaya erupted in fury. This is absurd. Kareem, set them straight. Admit you're fabricating this. Admit I had no part in it. But Kareem merely shook his head again. The EMTs examined me thoroughly. Miss, we're transporting you to the medical center. Appears you've suffered a broken hip. The throbbing pain echoed their assessment. Each inhale brought fresh torment. They eased me onto a gurney. As they wheeled me from the apartment, I watched the officer snapping cuffs on Zanaya. She shrieked, struggled, and spat curses. This mess is on you, you wretched hag. Once I'm free, you'll pay dearly for it. Mark my words, you'll rue the day. The woman officer silenced her. You have the right to stay quiet. I'd recommend you exercise it. They maneuvered me down the steps with caution. Residents emerged from their units, observing the chaos. Some whispered among themselves, while others stared on with grim fascination. Inside the ambulance, one of the EMTs, a youthful fellow with gentle eyes, squeezed my hand. Take it easy, miss. You're secure at last. The ordeal is finished. Yet deep down, I realized it was far from concluded. This marked only the start. We reached the hospital and they rushed me for imaging scans. The break proved extensive. Surgery was essential right away. They prepped me swiftly. An experienced physician, bespectacled and clad in a spotless white lab coat, outlined the operation. We'll insert a pin into your hip joint. It's a routine procedure for someone of your years. Healing will require a few months. I nodded faintly. Can therapy get me walking again? Certainly, though you'll rely on assistance initially. They administered the sedative. In those final moments of awareness, my mind replayed the chaos. How a subdued, unassuming, fractured soul had summoned the resolve to protect herself. How quietude doesn't always signal frailty. At times, it's mere buildup. At times, it's the hush preceding the tempest. And my tempest had unleashed its full wrath. Hours afterward, I stirred in a sterile hospital chamber. The illumination stung, cold and unrelenting. I attempted to shift, but agony pinned me down. A nurse entered. Take it slow, miss. The operation succeeded. Rest now. Someone occupied the chair by my bedside. It took moments for my vision to sharpen. There sat Kareem. His eyes, puffy and bloodshot from tears, met mine. Spotting my alertness, he bent forward. Mom. The word escaped as a fractured murmur. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I offered no reply, just held his stare. I realize forgiveness is beyond me, he pressed on. What I inflicted upon you is irredeemable, but I must tell you that seeing you there on the ground, witnessing Zanaya's actions, it snapped something within. Where is she? I croaked out roughly. In custody. They've hit her with assault charges. She's locked up overnight, with a court date in the morning. I shut my eyes. Justice. At long last, justice prevailed. I'm filing for divorce, Kareem declared abruptly. I ought to have sooner. I should have shielded you from the beginning. But fear held me back. I permitted her cruelty because facing her felt too daunting. That shame will haunt me forever. I met his gaze once more. So now what? Do you believe I'll pardon you? Erase it all and resume as if we were untouched mother and son. He shook his head firmly. No, I seek nothing from you. I came solely to express my regret and to confirm your well-being. He rose to his feet. I'm going. I won't intrude further. The apartment belongs to you. I'll arrange other lodging. And regarding the will, She hesitated. Keep me sidelined. I haven't earned a thing. Not one bit. He headed for the exit. A flicker ignited within me. It wasn't absolution, not at this point, perhaps not ever. Yet it was real. A tiny fissure in the frozen barrier I'd erected around my emotions. Kareem. He halted and pivoted back. You chose to give evidence against her. You chose honesty. That carries weight. His gaze brimmed with moisture once more. It falls short. No, I conceded. It falls short, yet it's an initial step. He inclined his head. He departed the space, abandoning me to my reflections. The quiet in the medical center differed from the hush in the apartment. This one felt pure, devoid of animosity or menace. It signified the onset of renewal. I remained there for 3 days. In that period, Kareem visited daily. He never lingered. He'd enter, inquire about my condition, and depart. He avoided defending his actions. He skipped further regrets. He simply existed there, attentive in a manner absent for years. On day 3, the facility's counselor approached. Mrs. Dubois, we must discuss your circumstances post-discharge. You'll require dedicated support in your healing process. Do you have relatives available to assist? My mind drifted to Kareem. It would have been simple to affirm, to let him assume responsibility, but I rejected that path. No, I retained some funds, I replied. I'll engage a professional. She acknowledged with a nod. We can arrange domestic caregiving and rehabilitation sessions. That evening, isolated in my medical cot, I pondered the path ahead. The mending would prove arduous and grueling, but I'd return to my residence, my territory, free from degradation or erasure. For the first instance in months, a semblance of tranquility washed over me, not utter joy. The bodily and mental anguish persisted, but it was serenity. The serenity of recognizing my resilience, my refusal to surrender, my reclamation of self-respect despite the fractured pelvis and estranged child. Gazing through the medical window at the urban glow, I realized the value. Each instant of suffering, each drop of sorrow, each restless evening, it all justified itself for this instant, this liberation, this quiet that belonged solely to me. Upon my release day, Kareem awaited at the portal. He'd arranged a customized shuttle for those with mobility constraints. They eased me into the vehicle with caution. Each shift still ached, but it had eased from the initial torment. Kareem settled beside me wordlessly. Conversation eluded us throughout the journey. We merely observed the passing scenery, each immersed in private musings. Reaching the structure, I noticed his preparations for my return. He'd fitted handrails in the lavatory, rearranged furnishings for wider access, and acquired an adapted seat for bathing. I've secured a caregiver, he informed me while guiding me indoors. She visits thrice weekly, along with a rehab specialist, all costs covered for the upcoming 3 months. I regarded him in astonishment. From where? He averted his eyes. I parted with my vehicle and several possessions. It's the bare minimum. Words escaped me. One side yearned to decline his aid, to safeguard my independence and separation, yet the sensible side understood the necessity, at least temporarily. I appreciate it, I whispered at last. He dipped his chin and escorted me to the chamber, but upon swinging the door open, I froze abruptly. The space had transformed. The surfaces now bore a gentle apricot hue. A fresh pane overlooked the exterior, bypassing the air duct. The bedding was updated and plusher. Sheer drapes, an elegant light fixture, and a plush mat completed the scene. What's all this? Kareem swallowed audibly. During your hospital stay, I brought in workers for upgrades. I believed you merited an improved environment. Moisture welled up unexpectedly, not from hurt, but from an intricate blend. Gratitude intertwined with sorrow, esteem laced with bitterness. This wasn't necessary. It was, he countered. I'd need to undertake 1,000-fold more, and even then it couldn't atone for the harm inflicted. I lowered myself onto the fresh bedding. It yielded softly, welcoming, unlike the sagging relic I'd endured previously. "And Zanaya?" I inquired. Kareem stiffened. "She's under custody still. Her court appearance occurred yesterday. The magistrate granted a no-contact directive. She must steer clear of you and this property. Plus, official assault allegations stand. Her attorney seeks a deal, but given my account." He faltered. "She'll struggle to escape lightly." I dipped my head gradually. One facet savored vindication, equity, yet another, one I loathed acknowledging, harbored a trace of compassion, not for Zanaya, but for the descent into this abyss, for how animosity had ballooned to devour all. "And your quarters?" I questioned next. "A temporary lodging," he said, "hunting for an apartment. Compact, within budget. Extravagance is beyond me now." He emitted a wry chuckle. "It seems that when your spouse ends up behind bars after you've given evidence against her, things turn messy in a hurry." We both went quiet. The air hung thick with decades of regrets and words we'd never spoken. "Kareem," I said at last, "I can't simply erase what you did to me, what everyone did. That's not how it goes." He gave a slow nod. "I get it." But I pressed on. "The truth you shared, the way you finally backed me up, even though it came so late, that carries weight. I'm not sure exactly how much, but it does. I caught the hitch in his breathing." "It's insufficient," I conceded. "Nowhere near enough, yet it's something to build from." He nodded again, then he stepped out, leaving me to wrestle with my mind. I remained in the hospital for 3 days. Kareem visited daily during that stretch. He never lingered. He'd pop in, check on my condition, and head out. No excuses from him, no further apologies. He was simply there, showing up like he hadn't in ages. On day 3, the social worker at the hospital stopped by. "Mrs. Dubois, we should discuss your plans post-discharge. Recovery will demand extra support. Do you have relatives who could assist?" My thoughts drifted to Kareem. It would have been simple to claim he could handle it, but that wasn't what I wanted. "No, I've got some savings left," I replied. "I can bring in help." She acknowledged it with a nod. "We'll assist in setting up home nursing and rehab sessions." That evening, by myself in the hospital room, I pondered the road ahead. Healing would drag on, full of discomfort, but I'd be back in my apartment, my own territory, free from anyone belittling me or making me feel erased. For the first time in ages, a sense of calm washed over me. Not full-blown joy. The aches in body and soul lingered, but it was tranquility. The kind that comes from battling through, from refusing to surrender, from reclaiming my self-respect, even if it meant a fractured hip and a son I'd lost. Gazing at the city glow through the window, I realized it was all worthwhile. Each stab of hurt, every drop of sorrow, all those restless nights, they'd led here, to this liberation, to a quiet that belonged solely to me. The morning of my release, Kareem waited at the exit. He'd arranged accessible transport for those with mobility challenges. They eased me into the vehicle with care. Though every shift still stung, it wasn't the raw torment of those initial days. Kareem settled beside me without a word. The drive passed in total hush. We both stared out, wrapped in our separate reflections. Pulling up to the place, I noticed the preparations he'd made. Grab rails now lined the bathroom, furniture rearranged for better flow, and a shower chair sat ready. "I've got a nurse lined up," he said while guiding me in. "She'll visit 3 times weekly, plus a therapist. It's covered for the coming 3 months. I stared at him, taken aback. "From where? What funds?" He dropped his gaze. "Sold the car and some extras. It's the bare minimum I owe." Words escaped me. One side yearned to reject his aid, to guard my independence and space, but reason knew I required it, if only temporarily. "Thanks," I whispered eventually. He dipped his head and steered me to the bedroom, but as I pushed the door open, I froze. The space had transformed. Fresh paint in a gentle peach hue covered the walls. A new window overlooked the outdoors, not some dingy air duct. The bed gleamed plush and inviting. Sheer drapes, an elegant light, a plush carpet. They all fit seamlessly. "What's going on here?" Kareem cleared his throat. "While you were away, I brought in a crew for updates. Figured you merited a nicer setup." Tears welled up unexpectedly, born not of hurt but from a tangle of emotions. Thankfulness tangled with grief, warmth mixed with bitterness. "You weren't obligated to go this far." "I was," he countered. "I'd need to do 1,000 times more, and even then, it wouldn't cover the harm I've caused." I lowered myself onto the fresh mattress. It cradled me softly, a far cry from the sagging relic I'd endured before. "What about Zanaya?" I inquired. Kareem stiffened. "Still in custody. Court date was yesterday. Judge slapped on a no-contact order. She can't approach you or the property, plus official assault charges. Her attorney's pushing a deal, but thanks to my statement." He trailed off. "She won't slide away lightly." I nodded deliberately. A portion of me savored the fairness, the reckoning, yet another fragment, one I loathed acknowledging, stirred a faint compassion, not for Zanaya herself, but for the spiral that had poisoned everything, for the venom that had devoured it all. "And you," I probed, "where are you crashing? Hotel for the moment. Hunting for a modest rental, budget-friendly, no room for extravagance these days." He let out a wry chuckle. "It seems when your wife lands in prison and you've turned state's witness against her, existence turns downright tangled." We lapsed into quiet, a weighty quiet brimming with years of errors and silent regrets. Finally, I turned to Kareem and said, "What you did, what all of you put me through, I simply can't erase it from my mind. Things don't resolve that easily." He gave a slow nod. "I get that," I went on, "but the way you came clean, how you eventually had my back, even though it came so late, it carries weight. I'm not sure exactly what kind, but it does matter." I caught the hitch in his breathing. "Still, it's insufficient," I confessed. "Nowhere near enough, yet it's progress." He nodded once more. Then he stepped out, leaving me to wrestle with my own reflections. 6 months had slipped by since that evening. Life had shifted entirely. 6 months filled with rehab sessions, relearning how to move on my feet, reclaiming not just my ability to get around, but my inner drive as well. The hip mended gradually, but it did mend. I didn't rely on Samira, my caregiver, daily anymore. Her visits dropped to weekly for standard evaluations. Jamal, my rehab specialist, kept showing up, though these days he felt more like a companion than a professional. He'd guided me not only in walking, but in building resilience, in pushing through whenever the ache flared up. "The discomfort never truly vanishes, Mrs. Dubois," he'd remarked one time. "What counts is our reaction to it. Do we hide under the covers or rise and press forward?" Kareem honored his word. He visited bi-weekly, always phoning first. His stays never stretched beyond an hour. Initially, our chats felt stiff and contrived. We discussed the forecast, light headlines, steering clear of history. Gradually, though, dialogue eased into something more genuine. He shared details about his work, the modest rental he'd taken, and his new hobby of preparing meals since no one handled it for him now. I opened up about my rehab progress, the novels absorbing me, and the little planter setup on my terrace. Tomatoes alongside fragrant greens, echoing the setup from my previous home. That earthy, moist scent linked me back to the person I was before everything derailed. On a mild spring day, Kareem showed up carrying a carton. "I have this for you," he mentioned, sounding uneasy. He lifted the lid. Within lay faded snapshots, images of him as a kid, shots of my younger self, photos featuring Theonius, scenes from birthdays, holidays, and trips I'd long since blanked out. "I dug them up from storage in my former place," he clarified. "Pulled this from your old house before the sale. I figured you might appreciate owning them again." I picked up one image. It showed Kareem at age 5 grinning with that missing tooth space in his grin. I stood behind, arms wrapped around him. We both looked joyful. both intact. "We've evolved since those days," I whispered. "Yeah," he breathed out. "I had changed. You too. The years reshaped us. Still, perhaps," he hesitated, groping for the phrase, "perhaps we could recapture a bit of it. Not identical, but close enough." That afternoon blurred into flipping through pics, chuckling over fond recollections, and shedding tears for the tougher ones. It cleansed the soul. It proved essential. It marked the start of whatever this budding feeling was, a warmth blooming in my core that I couldn't quite label yet. Full absolution hadn't arrived. Flashes of past shame still sparked fury at times. Sleepless nights from dreams where Zanaya wailed and Kareem applauded lingered. But those episodes grew rarer, and when they hit, they didn't overwhelm me like before. I'd grown accustomed to the hurt without allowing it to shape my identity. A week on, I ventured from the apartment solo for the initial time. I strolled leisurely through the area. I exchanged hellos with folks nearby I'd barely acknowledged prior. An elderly lady called Vivian welcomed me over for a brew in her place. Our discussion stretched on for ages. She recounted her experiences, her kids scattered afar, her spouse gone a decade past. Being by oneself is odd, she noted, while refilling our mugs. At moments, it feels like the heaviest burden. Other times, a true blessing. It hinges on choice, solitude by design or forced upon you. Her insights struck deep. I'd endured isolation for years, even amid crowds, since true aloneness stems from absent bonds, not empty spaces. Now, dwelling solo in my unit, I sense less isolation than ever, finally attuned to my own self. I'd rediscovered who I am. Vivian and I grew close. We met up often. She connected me with others in the building. We built a tight circle. Card games filled our Thursdays. Potlucks warmed Sundays. They mirrored me, women who'd endured life, endured blows, endured and thrived. Their tales held echoes of mine. Their resilience fueled my drive to fortify my own barriers. One afternoon, Kareem arrived bearing updates. They dangled a position in another town. Wowsow, he announced. Better salary. Solid prospect. My chest tightened. We'd barely begun piecing things together, and here he was pulling away. He caught my look and hastened to say, "I'm passing on it for now, not while we're only getting underway." "No," I cut in. "Take the offer." He stared, puzzled. "But I figured you began to feel better. We're piecing our bond back together and we'll keep at it," I assured him. "However, you shouldn't linger here just for my sake. Don't let chances slip away due to remorse. That's not genuine affection, my boy. It's penance-driven yielding, and I refuse to accept that." His gaze met mine, eyes brimming with tears. "So what is it you truly desire?" "I wish for you to embrace your own path," I responded with resolve. "I want your joy. I want your personal evolution. And I want our conversations to stem from mutual desire, not from a sense of indebtedness." "Mom, I owe you my entire world." "No," I countered, shaking my head. "That debt is settled. By owning up to the truth, by standing witness in court, by supporting me through these trying times, you've balanced the scales. Now, we're simply two grown individuals fostering a balanced connection. Balanced ties require breathing room. They demand personal development. So accept that position, pursue your dreams, and reach out whenever it suits you. I'll travel to see you once I'm more robust, or you can return here. But never remain from duty alone." He wept, and tears streamed down my face too. Yet these were purifying drops signaling release. 2 weeks on, Kareem relocated. He secured help for me, a reliable contact for any emergencies. He shared every means to reach him and embraced me tightly at my condo's entrance. "Mom, my love for you runs deep," he murmured. "It's endured forever, even when I failed to express it, even when I behaved like a beast." "I understand," I said, and I did. Deep down, I always had. Affection doesn't always suffice on its own. At times, it persists amid wreckage. But ours had matured now, more aware, more authentic, more profound. Once he departed, I settled into the living room, surveying the space. I glanced around the apartment I'd battled fiercely to reclaim, nearly at the cost of my existence, and a wave of thankfulness washed over me, not for the place in itself, but for its symbolism, my resilience in combat, my defiance against fading away, my choice to claim significance. I reflected on the Amara from a year prior, the one who'd offloaded her home impulsively, the one who'd inked away her possessions without hesitation, the one who'd embraced obscurity, convinced it was her fate. That version had perished right there in this dining area when her dish crashed to the floor. In her stead emerged this renewed Amara, tougher, more insightful, more whole. Imperfection lingered. Dread still visited. Certain evenings brought sobs. Some days the burden of her endured trials loomed, ready to overwhelm. But surrender was a thing of the past. Silence no longer defined her. She refused to shrink into confines imposed by others. One afternoon, 3 months post Kareem's departure, a letter arrived. From Zanaya, I clutched it for long minutes before tearing the seal. One instinct urged me to discard it unread, yet the emerging resolve to confront hardships prevailed, prompting me to unfold it. The note was concise. Amara, forgiveness from you isn't something I anticipate, nor do I assume you'll even skim these words, but I had to set them down. My actions toward you were beyond pardon. I inflicted cruelty, wielded abuse, embodied monstrosity. Excuses evade me, mere rationales that hold no weight. The mandated counseling from my conviction has unveiled facets of my character I'd rather deny. I'm a fractured soul who shattered another, a shadow that will pursue me eternally. I'm not seeking absolution, as it's beyond my merit. I simply need you to recognize my remorse for each cutting remark, each degradation, each instant of suffering I inflicted. And I pray you've discovered serenity, for if peace belongs to anyone on this earth, it's yours. Zanaya. I creased the paper deliberately and tucked it into a drawer. Whether forgiveness will ever come for her remains unclear, nor does it seem essential, since absolution isn't hers to claim from me. It's mine to grant myself, to pardon my former gullibility, my unquestioning faith. The years squandered in obscurity. That self-compassion was unfolding gradually, one day at a time. I rose and stepped onto the balcony. My tomato vines bloomed with tiny golden flowers, poised to yield produce soon. I inhaled profoundly. The breeze carried scents of moist soil and fresh horizons, and I pondered the wisdom I'd gathered. That muteness isn't inherently frailty. That restraint can serve as tactic. That biding time for the opportune instant reflects prudence, not timidity. That even darkness has boundaries, and upon hitting that edge, when exhaustion from evasion sets in, you can unleash a thunderous cry. All my years I'd lingered in the margins, yet margins too crave their instant under light. This was mine. Not through vanquishing foes, but via self-rescue, not via flawless retribution, but through restored self-respect. Not because harmony reigned, but because, at long last, after endless seasons, I held harmony within. From my balcony, my own, I gazed over the city, within my apartment, amid my existence, and a serene, profound, authentic smile curved my lips. For I'd absorbed the vital truth, sometimes holding one's tongue. Silence isn't a flaw. It's simply biding time for the perfect instant to express yourself. And once you do voice your thoughts after decades of holding back, everyone around pauses to hear you out. That's what I did. I let out a mighty cry, and I'll continue proclaiming it every single day from here on, ensuring I'll never fade into obscurity once more. No longer will I linger as a mere outline. I am Amara. And at last, following 67 years, I truly understood that person's identity. That person was sufficient. Beyond sufficient, She was complete. Enjoyed the tale. From which town are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments to connect. If the narrative resonated, feel free to back me with a super thanks, helping me deliver additional tales just like this one. Many thanks for your kind backing. I'm eager to read your thoughts on the story below. Check out the 2 fresh biographies on display that I strongly suggest. My channel holds even more gems. Remember to hit subscribe. Catch you in the upcoming biography. Warmly and respectfully,